Cushing syndrome. So now we are going to see remaining 2 more questions of the university questions. So Cushing syndrome, it occurs due to the overactivity of the cortex, adrenal cortex. Okay, adrenal cortex will secrete corticoids, that is glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids. So if the secretions, if there is a hyper secretion of the adrenal cortex, then that leads to Cushing syndrome. So the diagram is given below. They become a little bit of obese. Okay, so it is caused by some over secretion of the adrenal gland. Then it is also another important reason is so another important reason is that medically, if they are taking some sort of corticosteroids, that is so the corticosteroid medication, so that too leads to the Cushing syndrome. So it leads to centripetal obesity. That means what? Centripetal means the obesity will be present only in the center, not in the periphery. So the hands and legs will be small, but the chest, abdomen, pelvis will be big. So that is called centripetal obesity. Then there will be a retardation in the growth. Then another symptoms is hirsutism, that is presence of abnormal growth of hair on the human face. If for a female or a male, if there is excess of hair in the face, then that condition we call it as hirsutism. These are all the clinical features of Cushing syndrome. Then hypogonadism, that means the female and male reproductive organs will not be developed properly. Then this will lead to diabetes or hyperglycemia. Then osteoporosis, peptic ulcer, muscular weakness. In men, this Cushing syndrome will lead to excessive feminization. That is, he will be having the features of a female. If it in case of women, they will be having the features of male. That is presence of hair in the they are having mustache. So the overgrowth of hair. So these things and all masculine characters that will be present in the women. So these are all the symptoms of the Cushing syndrome. So in the diagram you can see how the centripetal obesity is being there. So this is these questions are being asked by Anna Lakshmi OT. Okay, so this is also some sort of the questions are coming to all AHS also, and even BPT. So just take a notes of it. Then next one, the other question. Second question is scurvy. We all have studied scurvy in small classes, no? That there is a bleeding in the gums. That is due to the deficiency of vitamin C, that is ascorbic acid we tell. So that leads to early symptoms will leads to weakness. Then they because the bleeding, if it is coming always from the mouth, then that will go for a tiredness. He will become very tired. Then sore arms and legs. So he has to get treated. The gums has to be strengthened. So if he is not getting treated properly, then that will lead to anemia. Okay, so scurvy is very important. So the other name for this is Mueller's disease or Channel's disease. Treatment is we have to give the vitamin C supplements. Okay, then the third question, it is a decompression sickness. Always they ask as Caissen's disease. Caisen, what is meant by Caisen means decompression disease. That is when we are going for a swimming, that is underwater diving, not like swimming that you are going to fell into a deep river or a deep water. Sometimes you can find this in some sort of playway things, no, that like MGM, VGP, that where the water bodies you all will be loving to go there, no? So in those things there will be a big tub like thing. So from the top you will be diving inside that water, then you will come up, isn't it? So like this is a type of underwater diving. So when you go for a diving, that is the drivers, those who are even though they got very much training in that diving, even though they get that so much of experience, they may experience this decompression sickness. That is, there is a pressure difference between the atmosphere outside and the pressure difference in the sea. So that leads to some sort of nausea or vomiting or some sort of headache. So that is called a decompression sickness. See, in this you will be seeing how a diver he is diving inside. Okay, so there is a difference in the pressure. So how you will be able to diagnose is the just a physical examination, because CT MRI it will not give that much importance. You can see whether he is normal or not, but physical examination will tell you that he has gone for a decompression disease, a decompression sickness. This will last for only temporarily, for some for 1 or 2 hours like that. But if he got practiced with that, then he will be it will be easy for him to recover. But if he is a new diver, it will take some hours to get cured. So what you will do on that type of, see in the second diagram you will be seeing patient is being lying inside a cover like thing. That is, they give plenty of oxygen. You might have heard that those who go for walking in the hills, that is, they go for this Kailash, Gangotri, Yamunotri, those who climb mountains, all the old people, when they become old, they will try to go to places to see God like that, no? So, while going there, they will be having the breathing difficulties in the high altitude. So, even diving also, they will be having the same problem. Even in going to high altitude also, they will be having the same problem. So what they will do is, we tell that bag as a oxygen bag or a gamma bag, we tell. So we put the patient inside that bag, just give him 100% of oxygen. Just he will be inside for some 5 to 10 minutes, then after that he will be getting cured. So this is called that oxygen therapy, that is giving him complete relief from that sickness. Then after that we can give some sort of fluids to for the dehydration. Okay, so how, if we have to recover that person from diving because of the sickness, this is called as Keyson's disease. So you have to give oxygen as a supplement. So, and next one is the fourth question. So until now these three questions you are able to follow. These are all 2 more questions. Are you able to follow? Okay. Next, coming to the Hering-Breuer inflation reflex. From the name, you can tell, see, this is a inflation reflex. That means we are preventing the lungs from overinflation. If you think you are blowing a balloon, you go on constantly inflated, what it will happen? The balloon will become burst. The balloon will get burst. So to avoid that, if we are going on inflating our lungs, whether the lungs will go for bursting. So to avoid that, this reflex is present. That is the Hering-Breuer inflation reflex. What it will do is, it will try to prevent the overinflation of lungs. That is, it will try to stretch the, it is one of the pulmonary, means the lungs are having the stretch receptors, and these stretch receptors are being present all over the bronchi, bronchioles. Then the airways, means what, small bronchioles, then the lungs. So during inspiration, these pulmonary stretch receptors will try to expand, so that the lungs will not go for a collapse. So how it is being done is, see, when the lung is inflated, these stretch receptors are getting stimulated, so the impulse is getting generated. So they are being carried by the vagal nerve, 10th cranial nerve, vagal nerve, and from which the impulses are getting over. Then you will be studying, no, in the pons there are inspiratory center and the expiratory center. So it goes to the impulses reach the pons. So there inspiratory inhibitory center will be there. That is, it will try to inhibit the inspiration. That is called a one neuron. So this impulse will go and inhibit the inspiratory center. Then what it will done? The inspiration will get stopped. If inspiration is stopped, what it will automatically go? Expiration will start. So inspiration is stopped and expiration is started, and no stretching of these receptors. Now the receptors have contracted. Now it will not stretch because it has intimated two pons. Then therefore no inhibition on the neurons. Now the inspiratory center again begins to send the impulse. The next cycle begins. So it goes as a cycle. So the pressure receptors, that is a stretch receptors, which are present in these bronchi, bronchioles, lungs, what it will do, it will try to stretch. It will try to send the impulse via vagus nerve to the pons, and the pons is having two centers, respiratory center and a respiratory inhibition center. So what it will do, it will go and tell the respiratory inspiratory inhibitory center to inhibit inspiration so that expiration can occur. So this reflex is called a Hering-Breuer reflex. Clear? This is very important in the respiratory system. Next, coming to the emphysema. So emphysema, everyone know it is a COPD, that is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease we tell. See the diagram present on the right side. It is the diagram of the alveoli. The alveoli sacs, what it will go is, it will go on stretch and it becomes damaged. So that is the condition of emphysema. What happens to the air sacs, that is the alveoli, it goes for continuous stretch. Then after that stretch, it is not coming back to normal. It attains a new shape. Okay, it will attain the new shape so that the elasticity is not maintained. So the alveoli, after stretching, it is not coming to its original position. So this is called emphysema. So this will lead to chronic cough. Okay, chronic cough and difficulty in breathing. Most common causes are smoking. So it is, what it will do is, it will try to reduce that is a loss of elasticity of the alveoli and the enlargement of the air sacs means alveoli. Okay, so the alveoli at the end of the bronchioles, it becomes enlarged and breakdown. That is, breakdown means it will try to expand and it will not come to its original position. So the air sac is completely destroyed, narrowed and collapsed. So it will not do any sort of work like diffusion process. It will not give that the air which enters inside, it will not come out. So it will become overinflated. Okay, then having fewer and larger damaged sacs. So like this is only one sac, the example is being shown. Like this, we have numerous alveoli and air sacs present inside the lungs. So the emphysema leads to damage or destruction of many alveoli. So that will lead to shortness of breath and chronic cough. So this is appears in case of early stages. These two are the conditions: shortness of breath and the chronic cough. Then later what it will happen is, when in case of physical exertion, we will be having a problem. Then in later stages, even in rest, we will be having all these difficulties. So this may occur due to frequent lung infections, a lot of mucus secretions, then wheezing, reduced appetite and weight loss, tiredness, blue tinged lips or fingernail burns. If you want, you can write, or for 2 marks this is not these much things is not in you need not write. Sometimes if they ask for 5 marks, you can go through it. Then anxiety and depression, then they may have a sleep problem because of this chronic cough. Then the shortness of breath, then they have morning headaches. Okay, so they have to go for a medical advice. So next two questions, I think I have made you understood, I think. Then coming to the voluntary, difference between involuntary and voluntary muscles. This is very easy, and then I have to tell students that some questions we have thought again and again, but you are asking again and again the same answer. We don't know the answer for that, we don't know the answer for this. So these things, voluntary, involuntary and all in muscles we have taught. It is very basic. Many things, the questions which you have written are all being taken already. Simply you are asking these questions I don't know, these questions I don't know. But when you sit and write, you can refer and write, but you are not referring. See, voluntary and involuntary muscles, you need not even see this PowerPoint. You can just think. Voluntary means skeletal muscles. So what it is doing, the voluntary means this muscles are under your control. Okay. So if it is under your control, so which system will be taking care of it? The somatic system will be taking care of it. Then where it is being attached, it is being attached to the muscles, because only the skeletal muscles are voluntary. Then you can write the features of skeletal muscles, like it is a striped muscles, like that. Then involuntary is, what are all the involuntary muscles? The cardiac muscles and the smooth muscles. These both are not under our control. The heart is not under our control, and your blood vessels, the organs which are present inside your body, then all these things are comes under smooth muscles, so they are also not under control of our own. It is under the control of our sympathetic autonomic nervous system. So we call them as involuntary muscles. Okay, so these are all very easy questions, but you are asking the difference between a voluntary and involuntary again and again. You can tell one more point, that is the voluntary muscles get fatigue, but the involuntary muscles do not get fatigue, because your heart is not getting tired, isn't it? It is going on contracting. So there is no property of fatigue in the involuntary muscles, but in voluntary muscle there is a property of getting fatigue. Then one more thing, whether the lactic acid formation will be present in your skeletal muscle or whether it is present in your involuntary muscles, because they are not getting tired, so the lactic acid formation will not be formed in the involuntary muscles. Only the voluntary muscles will be having the lactic acid formation, because it is getting tired. Then after, if you are giving particular time, then that becomes normal. Clear? Until now able to follow? Because every 3 questions I am asking you. You can reply, you can unmute and you can tell me. Okay, then coming to the femoral triangle or Scarpa's triangle. See, this triangle, you think you are going to keep your pant packet, no? Your pant packet, that will be your on the lateral side. Your pant packet will be on your lateral side. Then if you take the money inside, for if you are inserting your hand inside the packet, you will reach a region. So that region we call it as a femoral triangle. So the anatomically we can tell exactly at the inguinal canal region we will be having this small triangle called a femoral triangle. So it is an anatomical region of the upper third of the thigh. So it is a subfacial space. Subfacial means what? Because we are having 2 types of fascia, I have told you, superficial fascia and deep fascia I have told you. So this subfascia means where it will be present. It will be present where? Subfascia. It will be present below the superficial fascia. Okay, in between the superficial and deep fascia it is present. So it appears in the triangular depression below the inguinal ligament. See the diagram in this. So where is the inguinal ligament present? So where the triangle is present, the inguinal ligament is present above. So it is this femoral triangle is present below the inguinal triangle. So superiorly inguinal ligament is present. Medially the adductor longus, the adductor group of muscles, adductor longus muscle is present. Laterally the sartorius muscle, the other name for sartorius muscle is tailoring muscle, isn't it? So the lateral side sartorius muscles are present. So it forms a triangle. So the apex of the triangle is continuous with the adductor canal. So where is the apex we call? Apex and base. So apex is down or up. So you think this triangle is inverted shape. So the apex, you see it is towards the adductor muscle. The apex is towards the adductor muscle. Base is with the sartorius muscle. The length of the sartorius muscle is the base. Okay, so this medially the apex of the triangle is continuous with the adductor canal. There is a canal called adductor canal there. There the adductor group of muscles will be supplied by the adductor nerves, adductor arteries. Okay, adductor group of muscles, the obturator, internus. So these sorts of arteries and veins will be entering inside that canal. The roof is formed by the skin superficial, that is above. The roof means the above the femoral triangle. It is formed by the superficial fascia and deep fascia. That means what? Then it is present below the deep fascia. The superficial fascia contains the superficial. Then what are all the contents of this femoral triangle is, it will be having the inguinal lymph nodes, then nerves. What nerves is? Femoral branch of genitofemoral nerve, ilioinguinal nerve, then veins, saphenous veins, then branches of saphenous vein. Okay, then it is also formed by the pectineus and adductor longus muscles laterally. Okay, so what we have to know in this is the femoral triangle is why we are important, we are studying this is So these are the important structures present in the femoral triangle. Just the name alone you can tell. They are the lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh, femoral nerve, femoral sheath. In this femoral sheath, what you can see is from lateral to medial, what are all the structures present? From lateral to medial, we have nerve, artery, vein. Usually we tell VAN, no? Vein, artery, nerve, VAN, van we tell. But in this femoral triangle, it will be opposite. That is nerve, artery and vein from lateral to medial. So the nerve is present laterally. After the nerve, artery is present. After the artery, vein is present. Okay. So the femoral triangle has an important that the arrangement of artery, vein and nerve is opposite compared to the any other region. Then this region also contains the lymph nodes. So then what will be the applied aspects of it is in case of any angioplasty, if there is a problem in the heart and they have to do angioplasty, then they can reach the coronary artery, that is to reach the heart blood vessels. They can take they can go from this femoral triangle, so they can easily approach the coronary angioplasty. They can go and enter the coronary artery through this from the femoral artery. See, from the femoral artery they will insert a tube like structure, so that will have the camera in that. From that it will reach the coronary artery of the heart for the treatment of angioplasty. Then heavy bleeding, sometimes in case of any injury or a road traffic accident, if there is heavy injury, then there will be a bleeding. So this femoral artery is damaged, means a lot of blood will be gone. It will be a lot of blood will be there will be a loss of so much of blood, so it has to be stopped suddenly. Then another clinical thing is the midinguinal point, that is the vein is present there, no? So they can, if any puncture we need in the vein, the femoral vein puncture can be done there. That is in case of any lymphedema, that they have to take some sort of lymph edema structures and they have to go for biopsy, means they can approach from that region. Then positive pulsation from the femoral artery. If you touch the femoral artery, there will be a pulse. Because if sometimes the upper limb veins, so the upper limb arteries, they have gone for collapsed and we are not able to find the pulse, we can touch the femoral artery and see whether the pulse is being present or not. Then it is also important that the nerve which is present there is so superficial, so care should be taken that there should not be any damage to the nerve present there. Then it is for in case of lymphadenectomy. That means lymphadenectomy means removal of lymph nodes. If the lymph nodes are damaged, I told no, you can take for a biopsy. You can take a lymph node for biopsy. Biopsy is for whether they are having any cancer or not. So lymphedema we tell. If there is excess of lymphatic secretion present in the lymph vessels, then that will lead to lymphedema. This lymphedema, to conclude that, they take a biopsy. After taking biopsy, if they are sure that the lymph nodes are getting damaged, then they can remove the lymph present there. So that is called lymphadenectomy. So these things can be done in the femoral triangle region. So that only we are studying this femoral triangle 2 mark. They don't ask, they ask in the 5 mark mostly. Able to follow femoral triangle? Everyone are able to follow, because they will ask this for all students, because the angioplasty, most of the angioplasty is being done via femoral artery only. Sometimes only they travel through the brachial artery. Most of the time it is only through the femoral artery. Next question we can go. Okay, so coming to contraception methods. Contraception means it is some sort of methods or techniques, okay, to prevent the pregnancy. So what are all some of the measures that will try to prevent the pregnancy is some 6 sort of measures are there. One is a long acting reversible contraception. That is we call that as intrauterine device. Intra means inside, uterine means uterus, the some sort of implant or a prosthesis which is present inside the, we are keeping that inside the uterus of a female. So this is called a long acting reversible contraception. We call it as IUD, intrauterine device, and that lasts for 3 to 5 years. Initially it was only 3 years. After 3 years they have to remove and again they have to keep, but nowadays up to 10 years they can keep the IU intrauterine device. Okay, then this implant also lasts for minimum 5 years. After 5 years, in order to prevent some sort of infections, they can take it and remove it and put on another uterine device. Like we tell what the name is, like a copper T, we tell, no? Copper T, loop, we call them as a loop, Lippis loop, T loop. So many things are there. Just you know that is enough. So this will prevent 99% of the pregnancy. Then coming is the hormonal contraceptions, that is taking the pills tablet wise. So they are taking combined oral contraceptive pill and progesterone only contraceptive pill. So there will be 30 tablets, 30 to 31 tablets, 30 tablets in one sheet. Daily they have to take a pill. So this is also 99% effective. If they forgot 1 or 2 days, if they forgot, then forgot to take the pill, then that will become a failure. So they must think it, and daily they have to take that pill. If they daily they are consuming this pill, the pregnancy will be avoided. So this is called a hormonal method. Then barrier method is they are stopping the sperm which is entering the vagina. So that is by two types. By using the condoms and the internal condoms, external and internal condoms. So this is also one of the good method to prevent the STD, like sexually transmitted diseases. Then fourth one is the emergency contraception. That is, if unexpectedly if they had an intercourse, then they can take a pill called emergency contraceptive pill. After taking that pill, for it is after taking that pill, the pregnancy will be avoided. Okay, this is also 98% effective, but this is very much for health wise it is very worst, because continuously taking this pill is also very costly. So this is not so much of it is not good. Okay, then fertility awareness, that is they have to know when is their menstrual cycle, what is a safe period. That is called the awareness, that is called fertility awareness. They are planning how to plan a pregnancy, so that is called fertility awareness. Then permanent contraception, that is we call that as sterilization. Sterilization means what? Cleaning everything, cleaning up. So just cutting the vas difference of a male, that is called vasectomy, or cutting the tubes, what tubes of females, fallopian tubes of the female, we call it as tubal ligation. So this is permanently, but a tubectomy we call, vasectomy in male and tubectomy in female. So this is the permanent contraception. So these are the contraception and its types. Then parathyroid hormone and its effects on bone. What it will do is, see, parathyroid is a small 4 hormones, it is having a group of 4 cells, 4 glands it will be present. This is present inside the thyroid gland, parathyroid. This is very important in calcium metabolism. So what the role it will do is, if the calcium, amount of calcium present in the blood is more compared to bone, it will try to take the calcium and keep it in the bone. If the bones if the amount of calcium present in the bone is more, it will try to take it and keep it in the blood. So what it will do is the PTH effects on bone. Parathyroid, what it will do, the main function of it is bone resorption. Bone resorption means what? It will try to maintain the blood calcium level. So what it will do, it will try to erode the bone. This parathyroid, it will try to erode the bone. It will take the calcium from the bone and give that to the extracellular fluid, and it will try to increase the blood calcium level. You think if it is going on eroding, so that's the reason we will tell, no, due to parathyroid deficiency the rickets will be coming, rickets, and in old age for females osteomalacia. So what is the effect of parathyroid? It will try to remove the calcium and it will maintain the blood calcium level. Okay, so it will try to take the calcium from the bone It will try to give that calcium to the blood so that it will maintain the blood calcium level. So this is the parathyroid hormone and its effect on bone. Then coming to the sleep cycle, see, it is a sleep is a reversible. Reversible means what? Daily we go to sleep, daily we are getting up. Okay, so that is called reversible. Um, then we are getting awake, no? So this is called reversible. Coma is not reversible, isn't it? Once we go for coma, we can't tell that we will get exactly at this time at the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. We can't tell like that. So the sleep cycle is reversible. Then what is ARAS is ascending reticular activating system. In taking brain, central nervous system, I have told you already, there is a system called reticular activating system. So this system is helpful for sleeping, and this system is helpful for awakening. So during coma, what will happen is this RAS, reticular activating system, will be not activated. It will not get activated. So the patient is in coma. But during normal sleep, what happens? This reticular activating system, it is being inhibited. That's all. During sleeping, it will be inhibited. So we will go for sleep. After inhibition, this stopped. We get up in the morning. So this is the mechanism of sleep. So this is being done by the melatonin. It is the only hormone which helps in the sleep. No other hormone. This is secreted by the pineal gland. Okay, this is secreted by pineal gland. It reaches the pituitary, posterior pituitary. Then it helps in the sleeping. Then there are 4 stages of sleeping. Okay, so in the sleep, first we have to see that it is a wave like pattern. It is a REM means what you can tell this REM. What is REM? Rapid eye movement sleep. NREM is non-rapid eye movement sleep. When you sleep, see, when you are sleeping, you will not be able to follow. You see, if anyone is sleeping, you just notice how they are sleeping. Look at their eyes, how they are sleeping, and what is the position of the eyes, and whether the eyes are moving or whether the eyes are not moving. Just you can look it at. So rapid eye movement sleep is there. Then non-rapid eye movement sleep is there. Okay, so what are the 4 stages is in this first stage, NREM stage. First one is non-rapid eye movement. That is means what? There is no movement of eye, just you are closing your eyes. It is a transition period between the wakefulness and the sleep. So it lasts around 5 to 10 minutes. Then second one is the NREM stage 2. The body temperature drops and the heart rate begins to slow. Brain begins to produce sleep spindles. So you are trying to sleep in this NREM stage 2. Okay, this lasts for 20 minutes. Then NREM stage 3, the muscles go for complete relaxation. The BP and the breathing rate stops. Deepest sleep. When I am disturbing you in NREM stage 2, you will not be getting sleep. Again you will get up. But if I am not disturbing you and no one is disturbing that NREM stage 2, they can go for a deep sleep of NREM stage 3. Then REM sleep. The brain becomes more active. Body becomes very much relaxed and immobilized, and the dreams occur, so I move rapidly. So that we call it as REM. That is a stage of half an hour to 40 minutes, some 20 to half an hour minutes. So that is called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. So you are getting your dream only after you go for a good sleep. Okay, then next question is the trigone of bladder. Bladder I only taught for you, but you are telling we have not taught that trigone of bladder. So trigone is, now see the diagram, it is nothing but the triangular shape of the bladder. So bladder, it is a smooth muscle. Okay, it is made up of smooth muscles. It has see the orifice is present. The ureter comes and enters into the urinary bladder, and the urethra is coming outside the urinary bladder. Then there are internal and external sphincters present in the bladder. So these things will be seeing then. So what is the use of a bladder is temporarily it will store the urine. So it is very much hollow. So little bit it will be storing up to 400 to 600 ml of urine in an adult, healthy adult. So then what it will do, it will help in the micturition process, that is expulsion of the urine. So when there is a need of micturition, the bladder will try to squeeze itself and it will propel the contents of the urine then it will try to open the sphincters and the urine will be coming outside. So the musculature it is made up of a muscle called detrusor muscle. This muscle is helpful in the contractions and the relaxation, so that this will try to squeeze the contents of the urine to outside. And the fibers of this muscle become hypertrophic, that is in order to compensate of increased workload of bladder emptying. See, bladder emptying, during bladder emptying it goes for a complete squeezing of the bladder, so on that time the detrusor muscle goes for a high very so much of work, so the bladder is trying to squeeze itself in case of a micturition. Micturition means the process of evacuation of the urine. Then there are also two muscular sphincters, that is internal urethral sphincter and external urethral sphincter. See, internal is not under our control. Internal urethral sphincter, it is completely involuntary. It is not voluntary control, it is involuntary control. So in male, there is a difference, a little bit of difference in male and female. So what it will do is, in male it has to do two work, that is it has to help in the ejaculation of the sperms also. So because the sperms are coming outside via the same penis only, so in male the internal urethral sphincter, they are under the autonomic control, that is it is thought to prevent the seminal regurgitation during ejaculation. So only if it is preventing that, it will help in the micturition of the urine. Then in females it is the functional sphincter, that is no sphincteric muscles present separately like male. It is formed by the anatomy of bladder neck.